the punishment for violations of these laws, coexistent and rising right with it is the fact that so let's say 1 million people, and you had your so many thousands who hated the of whites who hated the blacks, and so many thousands of blacks who hated the whites. But it was my feeling that in between those two extremes, you had a larger, much larger segment of the population that just didn't pay any attention one way or the other, that were dormant, needed to be awakened, but were dormant.
But not
in other words,
racist,
maybe not accepting each other, but not hating each other either. In other words, the greater mass of people who paid no attention as they should have paid. Now, ever since the outgrowth of the civil rights movement and the leadership that has sprung up of small groups and individuals leading smaller groups, or individuals who lead no groups but are in a position of the public eye and are more vociferous, you find that they have polarized and caused more of that big in-between group to line up on one side.
Let me ask you anything. Let's deal with civil rights. Civil rights, you must understand, are laws, and laws are made to be broken. And no white man
I deny that.
Wait,
I think
no
that's
white
wrong.
man is ever going to put a law together that would really benefit black people. Now, if we
I
had
go
been
you one
better,
better, they
assumption.
shouldn't have had to pass a law.
that's right. Yeah.
13th Amendment should have been enough.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying that we should deal with, if black people had been dealing with human rights,
right, I think it's
rather than civil
disgraceful
rights,
that you even had to
then
think
we
to
would have
pass a
lost all the
law.
people that we lost and spent all that money doing
we're concerned about human rights in the Bok situation, and let's become quite specific. May I ask you, Mr. Peruto, what in your judgment is the basic cause of the difficulty recently at Bok High School?
Well, the basic cause, I think, is not with regard to what happens in the high school. I think that the residents around there, and particularly the white residents, don't even know what curriculum is offered in Bok. They know that it's a vocational school, but the various subjects or just what they have in there or what goes on in there is unknown largely to them, in my opinion. The entire problem stems from the students at Bok going to and from the school. Now,
that is, you feel that the students themselves are the cause of the problem rather than the community?
Oh, no, I don't mean that. I say that the problem lies in the students going to and from the school, not that one or the other caused it. Now, you have things that, well, for example, let's take it as a fact that you've got a percentage of the white residents there who are anti-black. And let's take it that we've got a percentage of the students that go to Bok who are black, who are anti-white. Now, generally, the two groups had no animosities toward each other. Generally, what happened now, recently what has happened is that Bok has bettered its
you don't believe any of those things you're saying. That problem has always been down there, man. Ever since the South left, it's been there, that problem.
Can we stop at this point and just talk a little bit about has there been real antagonism, and maybe Roger could speak to us a little bit here, between black and white students at Bok for the last several years?
Second year.
It's your second year. What's your feeling about that?
It's not the trouble inside of school. It's really the trouble outside of school. And like in the neighborhood, and all that happened in the neighborhood just bring on the students when we come and go to school.
What kinds of things would happen that you, for example, may have seen or heard about?
Well, like gang fights, you know, within the neighborhood. But this is at night, and as we come to school, everything is falling down on us. And like, they have officers out there, and they're supposed to be protecting, which we don't want to protect. This for the young ladies, you know, supposed to be going to Bok. And after all that protection that we had, all them policemen and officers that they had outside of school, like for groups of whites was around the building, or had the building surrounded. And if we were standing on a corner, something like that, we'd be chased off. But they had something like 2,000 or 3,000 out there, You see, this was
Nothing was done.
17, I think.
You feel that the police were showing favoritism to the local residents
Right.
instead of protecting the
And
black
if the
students.
police was protecting all them officers that they had out there, I think that it would have been better if they had cleared them off the street. If we're on the corner within 4 or 5 minutes, officer, come on, you're gonna chase us off.
Reverend Raines, may I interject something here? I think that everyone must understand this. All young adults should have the opportunity to go to school to get a good education. And no one should inhibit this. And any child should be able to go to school without fear of hurt, harm, or danger to their person in order to get this education. Now, down at Bok, as I view it, as has been stated by both Mr. Prudo and Roger, within the school itself, there's a wonderful curriculum. Children get along as the normal youngsters would get along. But this seems to be down there a confrontation between the white community adults and the young black students coming to and from school. And this is our immediate concern of trying to...
He's saying, and the police.
Well, and we're trying to get this straightened out.
Well, you see, I think there's another underlying reason
that's just
for
a
some of that problem.
superficial
Wait
thing
now.
that's happening
No,
down there.
I'll deal with the underlying cause. I'm going to
Yes,
go back
there
2
is an
years.
underlying.
Now, you
goes
take,
back
when
longer
they
than that.
transferred Caparel from Southern and made her principal of Bok, the overall strategy was to make Bok all white, because I think now the
It was? Where'd you learn that?
I'm going to tell you now. I think
wish
right
you
now
would.
they have appropriated almost $1 million in renovation, computer down there, right? Miniature TV station, right? And all these kind of things down there. And I think that the white community knows, they know what's going on. So now I think the thing is they don't want them little black kids to get that advanced education. So now what they want to do is run them out. But now I'm in favor. Now I personally.
That's an opinion you got.
This is my
I think
personal
that's
opinion.
still too superficial.
No, I know you think so. But see, I can tell you a number of things, like when the black students the black football players were attacked around 10th and Porter. Ms. Evelyn Scott and I, we went down to the school there, and we told, she had gone 3 times, and told Caparel that was going to be some problem down at 10th and Porter with those white hoodlums down there if they didn't give the black students transportation. And she wanted to ask her, how did she know? So what happened? They were attacked. And we went back and they got transportation in the afternoon. They said they couldn't get it before. Now, we know the problem. We know the problem at that school. And basically, it's that white neighborhood they want to turn that school all white. Now, I personally am in favor of that. And what I think that we, the black community, should demand is that they build a black training institution within the black community, and then they can have their little school, and they can have their little thing, and we'll have our thing, and we won't have any problem.
You know, you're absolutely wrong on what you're saying.
I know it's wrong, but when are you going to start doing it?
You're absolutely wrong, and I take it that it's just your personal feeling that this is an overall strategy to turn the school
white. Why don't you ask him? He goes to school, ask him what he thinks.
All right, now talking about what Roger said, for example. I represented the people who were arrested. You're saying that there was favoritism shown. Okay. There were about 16 people arrested. I think it broke down to something like 3 blacks and 13 whites. Now, so much for your favoritism.
Shouldn't have been any blacks.
It happened that I represented all of them as a step in trying.
Big deal. They shouldn't have been there anyway.
Big deal, little deal. I did.
They shouldn't have been there anyway.
Now, if you want to hit me personally on something like that,
no,
fine,
I'm just saying
go ahead.
they shouldn't have been arrested.
I'm telling you what happened.
Because I was there.
Now, number one, in dispelling what you're saying about the favoritism. Now, there have also been complaints from the community that there was a stabbing where some misinformation was given out, and I'm quick to say that there was misinformation, that it was a Bok student who stabbed the white boy in South Philadelphia there. And then the whole group got up in arms, the whole area. And he is right, Roger, when he says that they were out on the streets, and the Bok students that came into school came into that feeling of hostility. Then you get the opposite reaction, where some of the people around there tell me of what happened after they got into the school, where it was predominantly black in the school, where they beat up the few white kids.
So?
Now, what I'm trying to say to you is that this thing goes back and forth, tit for tat, All of it is foolish, and all of it is not right, and none of it should
Well,
go on.
why don't you tell your Italian neighborhood?
Why don't you tell the black students
They
not
weren't
to
doing
do
anything. You see,
You're
that's the
telling me
thing.
that
Was
why don't
anything
I
going
this,
on in
why
school?
don't I that? You're
Wait,
saying
hold
it
on.
in
What
a
was happening in
fashion
the
that I
school?
don't do it.
Wait,
Well,
what was happening in
Roger,
the
you
school?
tell
Hold
us
it.
what was
What was
going on
happening
in
in the school?
Well, in school, everybody was upset what's going on the outside.
That's right. But nobody was out there. No students were out there.
All right, now
No
another
no students were
antagonism
out
that
there.
happened was
But there were
about
white, so-called white adults were out
200
there.
black students left the school
No, what school?
and attended a black coalition meeting in West Philadelphia.
So?
The black coalition people came back with the students in buses and without a by your leave, walked into the school without requesting permission, led by these adults from the black coalition movement, and called an assembly and started to
Why don't you
say
take it
what
up
they
with
wanted to
them?
say.
What
Now,
was this?
that is something else.
Well, take it up with them. We don't
That
belong
is
to the
something.
Black
Well,
Coalition.
why do you tell me whenever I
let's,
tell you what causes these things, you say take it up
No,
with
no,
them?
it
but
started,
you don't
it
wanna
started 2
take it
years
up
ago,
with your
man,
own
and you want to talk about
community.
incidents. I have a
Now,
whole
look,
list of
are we
incidents
gonna-
that
let me
happened that
ask,
very
are
we
same
gonna
day. Would you
talk
like
about
for me to read some of
the
them all?
difficulties
And no
on both
offense, all
sides,
of
or
them
do you want to
blank.
talk about the
All
difficulty
of
on
them were
one
blank.
side?
All of them blank, and not a
No, I
single
think
thing
we're
was
getting
said.
a little way out
Let's
here.
just take one. Let's take the one of the issues that is.
Wait a minute,
All right,
I think we're getting this a little way out here. First of all, we're speaking about individual instances which have come up. This is the result, the effects of something which is lying much deeper. Lester said that the problem goes back 2 years. I said the
No,
problem
it goes back further than
more
that.
than
No,
that.
I didn't say no
First
2
of
years. I
all,
said when Caporal
by the very
was
nature,
transferred
whatever
from Southern over
you
to Bok.
say,
No,
by
no,
the
the
very-
history is there.
by the very nature of this notion of prejudice here, by the very fact that you have the way our tradition is at this present time, that by the very fact that you have black people coming into a white neighborhood, by that very notion you're going to have tension. And then the next thing, some little stupid thing has to happen, and you're going to have the effects going back and forth, and all I can see is what's happened down there now, the effects of going back and forth, back and forth. Unfortunately, it lies deeper than that. It lies deeper than that because we've got to start somehow or other changing the attitudes of these individual persons so that they'll be more sensitive
And that's a
regardless
job
of
for
what
you. You
Lester
got
said.
that shirt on backwards. You say you're a
Father,
preacher or whatever you
Father
call
Kirkland,
yourself.
what
Why don't you
can
deal
you
with it? That's
tell
your
us
problem.
what your people, the people in your parish, you are somewhat involved in this, how they feel about what they want? Do they want Bok to become all white or move in
First
that
of all,
direction?
this business of the school problem is the superficial thing. That Bok school just represents something which is long and much deeper than that. Our people
That's
down
it.
there...
It's just a rallying point. It's, you know, the whole
right,
thing.
it's an occasion. Unfortunately,
You know,
occasion
you
for
talk
them
about
to
things that
shoot to get that
precipitate.
thing
Now,
out.
you take, for
Well,
example, I'm
I asked
Italian.
Why
him
don't
a
you let
question.
him
Could
answer
you
the
deal
question,
with
man? He
that?
didn't
Well,
ask
just
you
a
that. Why
moment.
don't you
Now,
let him
just
answer
to
the
show you
question?
what causes things like this. You say, well, what caused it?
Why don't you finish your
Italian
question? You know
people
how he's
or
gonna
people
talk,
of
you know.
Italian background are largely close to their priests. Now, you take remarks such as being heard on the air now, where a man says, just because you got your shirt on backwards and all that, that's the kind of thing would be enough
Well, all right, let's
in the
not-
area to cause
I'll tell you the
not
reason.
assume-
Look, I'll
and
tell you
then
the
they'll
reason
say,
why. I'll tell you the
well,
reason
what
why I say
happened
that.
there? The
I'll tell you the
whites
reason
did
why.
this and the whites
Simply
did that.
because
That's the
they
kind
are
of thing that is
simply because
offensive.
if you take your
This-
wars, all your wars, the first thing the man does is send his missionaries in. That's the first thing he does is to pacify the people.
Well.
That's the reason why they're in the black community now, is to pacify black people, and
And-
that's why we're organizing
I
now
say that
a
is
great
an
drive
unfair
to get them
assumption.
out
That's
of
an
there.
unfair
Because we are
assumption.
doing any good. We don't need
Well,
anybody to
but it's an
pacify
unfair
us. The
assumption.
same thing as the Vista
Unfair
workers and all these other
conclusion.
tricked up programs in the black community to pacify
But
the
you
people.
automatically-
And why
you
we
automatically
try to
assume
stop
that they
them.
were all
apart for a
tricked
moment,
We want them
Lester.
out.
I think it's reasonable, in terms of the history of the Christian white church, for black people to feel hostility to the church,
Definitely.
which
No one is
has,
denying
which
this.
has institutional racism built into
All right.
itself and into its people.
that's-
And it
right?
goes all
So
the
that
way
shouldn't
back.
The
surprise
Catholic
us.
institution is
Goes
almost
all the
a
way
fourth
back
line.
even to the time that they had black popes.
Look, now, the
Let me ask-
Catholic institution is
No
about
one
the
is-
fourth richest institution in the world. It's nothing but a
Where do you
business.
learn that?
Oh,
right.
would you like
Where
to
do you
know?
learn
Just
it?
like I learned
No, wait a
about
minute.
you with
You keep
this all-
spouting
look,
things,
just
but you
like I
never
put
back
together,
us
all right,
up.
just like this white proposal that you put together,
Which
or you and your
proposal is a
Italian
white
friends got
proposal?
together, this is the same.
Will you
this is
kindly
where-
not
it's
label
your
it?
handwriting.
Will you
It's
tell me
yours.
where
It's
it's
yours.
white?
Will you
It's
let
yours.
me? Will you let me
It's
bring
yours.
the
getting-
one
And
issue
you
back?
admitted this
Field
morning
of
that
this
there was
thing.
a
Let's get
police
back to
on
the
this
thing.
committee.
I
right?
did not
Right? Yes, you
admit
did.
something.
Yes, you did. You
Lester,
said that there was a
I
police.
did not admit something.
Didn't he say that a
in the sense
police?
that it's
this
something
I
is
asked
wrong.
him, right, brother High?
Yes, well, we're
He
going
said,
to...
wait,
And
yes,
I said there were black policemen.
He said a police. No, you didn't. You said a white
I didn't
police.
say there were black policemen
And
there
when this thing
for
was
these
drawn up,
proposals.
but on this
I didn't
proposal
say
here,
that.
there are nothing but whites
Why do you
involved.
insist on me answering
And
you?
then
You
there
won't
were,
answer
then you
me.
said that was a white police
Will you-
who is on sick
What's
leave
wrong
now.
with
who
your
is on
proposal?
here.
Bless it.
And
Look, can
here
we
it is,
stop
here it
a
is.
minute,
You said
please?
the following
Sure,
are
let
me
proposals formulated
exercise.
by the committee representing the community
I'll
in the
stop.
area
Let me-
of
let
Bok.
me-
There
I
are no
have
black
stopped.
people involved here.
All right, let's go to the one question that we were back at.
Right,
What do
you
your,
wanna know
do
how
your people
our
want?
people feel
White
at
to
this
become
particular time?
all white or more white?
No, insofar as
Well,
our
no,
people
they
are
don't.
concerned at this particular time is the safety in the neighborhood. Now, I
For
try
whom?
Safety of whom?
of
For whom?
everybody. I'm trying to tell them, we're preaching it, I've spoken, I've gotten into more arguments about this thing, and I've been called many names by our own particular people simply because they think I'm advocating and being on the side of the Negro. I'm trying to tell them the same thing I'm telling you, that the history of prejudice is a sad thing. Let's stop it now. There are many ways in which we're going to stop it. This whole aspect, you don't understand the Negro people. I said you're not sensitive to their problem. You haven't gotten kicked around. Maybe your grandfather didn't, all that sort of thing. I think if and when we all begin realizing that we're Americans, first of all, there's got to be a unity in the country and a lack of prejudice. Now, this thing, it's like saying I hate floods. Oh, sure, sure, nobody likes prejudice. But it's a deep underlying thing. What we're discussing right here, unfortunately, is just too superficial. I think we got to go deeper.
Well,
That's
Father
right.
Cabral and I would go along
They're
with what
trying
you're
to keep it
saying
at
there.
Bok, you see, but it's not-
I mean, let's say
listen,
now,
let
what
me say
measures are we
this.
going to take?
Platitudinous though it may seem, I think if all of us were to think of everyone as humanity
Right.
and think in terms of operating under the golden rule, then I think a lot of the problems which have existed for the last 40 years, not just the last 2, 3, or 4, for
Right.
40 years
All the
in
more
this
than that.
area,
Right.
in the Bok area, in the
In the
South
Bok
Philadelphia
area,
area,
It has been
could
there.
be erased at this time.
Right.
And this is what I am saying. I want these young people at that school to be able to go to school without anyone bothering them. At the same time, on this two-way street we're talking about,
Right.
we are saying to the young people, as you go through the neighborhoods, all we want you to do is go ahead and don't bother anyone.
Oh, I mean, I
And
realize that's
this
going
is
to be
a two-way
impossible.
street.
Sure.
Mr. Highsmith, may I ask you, do you think it's a wise ruling of the board that, as they are called, outside agitators, though that phrase always reminds me of what the South used to say about northern people coming in, that's a double-edged phrase, but that outside agitators or speakers cannot now come into the schools without the principal's okay? You feel that this is a
Well, I think
Good
that,
thing.
as I said before,
What do you
this
call
is
an
something.
agitator? What do you call an agitator? What
This
do you
is
mean,
something which
agitator?
has existed over the time. Now, agitators, quotes, unquote, whatever you want to call
That's
it.
an outsider right there who
I
doesn't
don't
even
know
live in South
exactly
Philadelphia,
what
but
this
yet he put a
means.
proposal together for the people in the community.
There's an
Lester,
agitator.
But I live in the community.
Mr. Pruitt, let me finish
Ah,
this.
you
If
see,
you live there, you can
See,
agitate,
all right.
okay?
Well, you don't live there, and you have no business putting
Mr. Pruitt,
an
and,
all-white
Mr.
proposal
Lester, let me
together
finish
for the
this
black
thing.
community down there.
let Mr. Highsmith continue.
Anyone in the community in Philadelphia can go into a school and talk with the principal. Now, after the principal and this person or persons, whoever it may be, after they have concluded their talking, then the principal will say, well, then this is it. Sometimes it can be helpful, sometimes it cannot be quite so helpful. The principal is the one who uses his or her judgment as to which person will come in to speak to them, but always they must go to the office first of all. At the conclusion of the conference discussion, then the person is to leave the school. Under no circumstances are they to stay there if the principal does not want them there. This has been a standing rule, but it's been clarified by the board at this time.
But I want to make plain that I want to say this, that one of the reasons, there are a number of reasons why these things happen. Now, you take this Saturday night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, Rizzo was sitting at 8th and Snyder in the Houston Community Center, so-called having a meeting with the community people there. And while he was there, we know we were there because we have our own thing and we patrol our areas too. With the young Afro-American, we've been doing that for over a year so that we can keep down the gang activity. And in fact, the brothers are united, they're cool now. We don't have to worry about that problem now. But while he was sitting there, very time that he was sitting there, man, there were over 1,000 people at 9th and Mifflin. Remember, you saw it in the paper where they said 600. We saw them. They didn't do anything to them. They had the sound truck.
Well, what were they doing? There's something
Wait.
should have been done to them.
Wait.
Well,
What would have
they
been?
doing?
What would have happened to us if 1,000 else had been standing there? Wait, they took the sound truck,
Just-
wallet signs, and went all through the neighborhood. You saw it. They had it on the front page of the Enquirer.
Yeah.
Now, Now, and I know what I'm telling you because we saw them. There were no uniformed police there. They had 2 or 3 civil disobedience cats there. Nothing was done to them. Nothing.
Well, what was done to the 200 that came into the school being led by the Black Coalition without permission?
Shouldn't have been 200, should have been 2,000.
Well, you're saying that when your community
If they
does
can
it,
do
it's
it,
to be okay,
yeah.
it should be done
All right,
more.
well, if the white community
then why
can
do
do
you
it and it's all right,
complain?
then we can do it and it's all right.
Oh, why do you
see?
complain when the
But
other does
see,
it?
your whole problem is, man, you
I'm
control the
saying
school.
neither should do it. You're saying that it ought to be increased on
No,
your
no,
side.
I agree with you, but how can you sit up and talk anything when you sneaked around with the white community and
Would
put
you
this
mind
together
telling
and put
me
this
what
together?
proposal, I'm
Why
going
don't
to
you
ask you again,
articulate
is
what the
white
proposal
racist
is?
there?
It says proposal formulated by the Committee of Representatives of the community surrounding Bok High School in South Philadelphia.
All right, now tell me
Now,
what
where are the
proposal
community
is white
people?
racist.
Where the whole
Would you
thing?
tell me which one? Will you
I'll
read
tell
it
you.
to me and
I'll tell you very
me?
simply.
I'm
How
begging
many
you.
black people in the community?
I asked you even before we came here.
I'm going to
Why?
tell you. Wait, let me ask you. He asked me a question. I'm going to ask him. How many black
Eventually.
people from that community were directly involved with this thing here that you put together? How many?
Well, the person who made
Wait,
the first
how many?
draft, will you let me answer you?
How many?
The person who made the first draft of notes when we formulated those was a black man,
Who was he?
Clarence Farmer.
All right, then we'll have to deal with Clarence Farmer.
Well,
We'll have to
why,
deal with Clarence
why
Farmer.
is it that you have to deal with somebody when it's a good proposal?
How do you know it's good? Suppose we don't like it.
Again,
Suppose we don't like it. Suppose we don't like what you did.
What is white racist about it?
Because
What is
nobody
not
from the
good?
community is
What
represented.
do you disagree with?
And I'm not the only one that's really on
You
this
keep
thing,
shaking
man.
papers like there's something
This
bad.
is your thing. This is your
I
thing.
agree. Yes, it is.
And you
I
don't live
love
in the
it.
community either, do
Tell
you?
me why you hate
Do you
it.
live in the
All right.
community?
I want it. Tell me
Simply
why you
because
hate
no
it.
black people live in that community had anything to do with this.
And that's
I'm
legitimate,
telling
don't you
you,
think,
you're
Mr.
wrong.
Pruitt?
You
Sure,
were
it's
there.
legitimate. We don't
Were
care
you
about
there,
what this cat
sir?
thinking.
Well, Mr.
No, you
Pruitt,
wouldn't
I
dare
was,
invite
and
me.
I tell you there were
You
black
wouldn't dare
people there,
invite
and you're
me there.
telling me there were
You
not.
wouldn't dare invite
Mr.
me to
Pruitt.
I
anything
invite
like
you
this.
now.
Mr. Pruitt, it seems
Oh,
to me
after it's put
legitimate
together.
today for the black community to resent proposals made to control or shape their school or where they're predominantly involved when they're not involved in the shaping. I think that's legitimate, and we
Well,
want
the
to agree
same
with
thing
that.
has
legitimate whether
happened
he-
in
whether he
other
likes it or
schools.
not.
I read recently where there was a school that was about 25% black, and that they wanted to throw out the white teachers, and they wanted that. Now, I don't know if that's
Well,
right or wrong.
we're dealing with
But
Bok,
what I'm
though.
saying is, why, and I'm
Well,
not
he's a
saying
lawyer,
one
you
side
gotta
is right or the other side is right. I'm saying, why is it that it's called white racism when the white community does it, and it's called elevation when the black
All right,
community
I'll tell you what
does
we'll
it?
do. We'll get the brothers together and we'll get together a proposal and ship it down there and give it to you.
Don't
to the
ship
white
it, join with us, and we'll do it together.
I don't have time.
Wait a minute.
Why
think-
do you want to
Right.
split the two communities?
You did.
Well, the communities
You
are
did.
I
split.
invited your
They're
community.
already-
They
they're
didn't
already
have enough
split, man.
interest
They've
to
been split.
attend.
Ever
Well,
since I was a child,
If
it's
you'll,
been
if
split.
you'll invite
Father
me, I'll go
Carbone
to
wants
yours.
to
It's
Yeah,
been
come
split.
on.
Ever since I was a child, it's been
I have
split.
invited you. Will you
Oh, no.
invite me?
I wouldn't waste my time. I have brothers. We have business
Well,
to
then
take
I
care
think
of.
you're putting
Well,
it where
we
it
have
is.
business-
Is
You
he
put
in
it
effect
together,
getting
so
what
you
you're
try
You're
with it's your
saying it
proposal.
like it is.
It's
Fine,
your proposal.
concerning this, true, concerning with this so-called community thing here, very definitely, I don't think anyone's going to deny the fact that if a community must act together, it's got to be composed of both black and white members. This is the
Tell him
one
that.
thing I
Tell
think
him
I told Mr. Pruitt a little while ago, insofar as with the one evening that I was there at a meeting at the Bok School, the fact that first of all Negroes were eliminated from that meeting that was
That's
on a
right.
Tuesday evening. Then I personally saw 2 Negroes being
Are
eliminated.
you talking about the one before I
The
came
one
into the situation?
before
Talking about
Mr.
all those
Pruitt
meetings
came
white
into the
folk had down there at
situation.
Bok. We're talking about
And
all
Mr.
of them.
Pruitt also told me, he says, right, you know, that's the real problem down there, certainly, because when you don't have a community acting together as a community. Now, this is an indictment to those people down there who, if they're going to act as a community, must act as a united community. If there are black people in there, fine. Let them act as a black
But how can
community.
you act
Well,
when you
but
have
you've
an
gotta have the
outsider
right
like
to
this who
guide
doesn't
us,
even
to
live in the area
definitely,
coming
you know.
down there putting a proposal
Reverend
together
Raines,
and shutting it
may
down
I
like you
clarify this? I don't want this issue of which Mr. Lester is talking about, and rightly so, confused with a steering committee which is being formed now.
His
The
name is
steering
on there too.
committee-
His name is on there too.
The steering committee
He's wearing
for
two
the
hats. His name is on
South
there.
Philadelphia
School.
High School is being
I
composed
have the
of
list,
clergy,
by the
both
way.
black and white, of parents, both black and white. We are going to invite police, both black and white, so that you can get a good picture of what is going on. The only way you can have communication and dialogue is involving all the people in the area. and you cannot exclude one group
Right,
and have
exactly.
any sort of thing going on. Now, the only
Right,
way
we're
this whole
agreed on.
crisis,
He agrees
the only way the
with
whole crisis can be
Well, I
settled
do
is
agree.
going to
You
be a
don't
meeting of the
agree.
minds.
Well, he's simply suggesting that within this kind of procedure, if I understand you, that there is a legitimate right of caucus, and that today
Sure.
especially, the black community has got to be able to get together.
No, we're gonna.
Well, you are, right. Now, and one thing that concerns
But they
me...
complain when the white community
No,
does
see, he
it.
wastes
Well,
his
but
time.
the white
He just
community,
wastes his
as
time.
the board has just said that there can be no racially exclusive meetings in the schools.
And
Now,
that's a very, very, very good pronouncement.
all right, but let me ask you this, though. Germantown High School, which is in the community where I live, the black student union there has been permitted to meet in the building, and it's not been disruptive. And my concern now is how, if the schools are not going to be the place where black young people can be who they are, that is, can be together in their own particular identity. But that has to happen now someplace outside the schools.
That's what's happening.
Now that worries me. How in a white-controlled society are black young people going to be enabled and fostered the chance to
Well, I
be
think they
together?
have to get in
You can't.
with the same
You can't.
society.
You can't.
It's not a white
How
society
how
or
are
a
you
black
gonna get in there,
society.
man? How are you gonna get in there?
I once
You tricked
again
us up-
invite you in.
tricked
You
us up in that
refuse to
integration
come
thing.
in.
You tricked us up in the integration. We aren't
You
gonna buy
refuse
that.
to come
We
in.
aren't gonna buy it because we know it's a
Now,
whole lot
you've
of
asked,
baloney.
Reverend, how does the black community get in? One
Well,
way is by
no,
invitation,
I didn't ask
and
that.
it's
One way by
refused.
I didn't ask that.
What about on a
how
humanitarian
are
basis?
they
What about
given?
as human beings?
As human beings, will you come?
All right, well, why didn't you
Will
ask
you
us when
come-
you put this piece
will
of
you
paper
come
together?
as a human being,
Why
not
didn't you
as
put
a
this
black
together
man,
when
as a human being?
you were throwing black people out of
Will
Bok
you
School that night?
come?
No, not me.
Will you?
Absolutely.
For
If
a
I could bring all
dialogue.
the brothers, then the
But
school
not-
wouldn't hold it.
Bring
That's the
them
only way I
all.
come in here.
Will
Oh,
you
no,
come
no.
with all your
How
brothers?
far could we get with the brothers?
No, wait a minute.
About a half a block, right? If that far.
You're
Roger.
That's
constantly...
the only way I'd come. I'd bring
Well,
everyone
look,
else.
You were
if you're going to make
constantly-
excuses for not coming, that's
You
one
two black
thing.
people out of the meeting.
I'll go
guy
with
said,
you
You'll
to
never
see
go
the
any place with me.
commissioner
No,
of
no, no.
police
For
to
what?
make certain there's adequate
Oh, no. You
protection.
see,
How
that's the
about
kind of
if we go to
society
the
we live in.
commissioner
We
of
got to have a
police?
white face to
How
guarantee
about
our
if we
the
go
right
to the
to walk the
commissioner of
street.
police
We'll
to
never buy
afford
it. We'll never
protection,
buy
and
it.
we'll go to your
See,
place?
we've got to have
Will you invite us to
we've got
your place?
No, no.
We invite
Oh,
us
no.
in your
Oh,
community.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. You have
Well,
a
now,
business
now
there.
there you're putting it
You
where
spend
it
your
is.
time working down there trying to
Can
straighten
I
out your
come to your
Italian
meeting?
neighbors. No, spend your time working with your Italian neighbors, and we'll spend time working with our people.
Lester.
Then you
and
don't
then we
wanna
can
get together to solve any
We can get
problem.
together after we get our thing together.
You know, you're constantly referring to that piece of paper as if it's the last word and there's
No,
no
no.
going to be
Or
no
this
guy
chance
here
or like
talking-
it's bad.
No, the only reason
Or
why
the-
I'm
I noticed
referring
he
to this
won't
paper
read it.
because
He
this
wants to
guy's sitting
refer
here
to
talking
it,
with
but
two
not
hats,
read it.
man.
Well,
They
let
sit
me-
down there and put this thing
Is this
together
the
and send
last,
it to the
is
black
this the
community and say,
last
look,
word?
listen, oh no.
There'll be
oh,
no
Lester,
no
look, I just
revision
wanna
in
show you
this
this
sort
guy
of
here
thing?
wearing
Let me just ask
No.
Lester, do you see any hope in the steering committee of which Mr. Highsmith speaks?
None whatsoever.
You don't?
No.
Now, what do you feel ought to be done? That is, what are you going to do as a black community?
That black community will have to decide that.
Will
What's
that
to
be
done,
within or
but
without
if
the law?
Yeah, you want my personal opinion
Yeah.
about Bob?
Right. What do you think ought to be done?
I think that they should build a black institution within the black community, black administrators from top to bottom, and then we'll teach our own youth.
Two nations.
And then you won't have that problem. That's already two nations, man. You have black people surrounded between Mifflin and Snyder Avenue, 7th and 5th Street right now. Go
Plus
down
no-
there and look.
and no
Plus a
one
white
says that
collar
that's
nation
right.
all around
That's
the
right.
city.
Plus you have
Sure.
sprinklers there.
But nobody says that's
nothing new
right.
about that.
I mean,
But
we're
he's
not
saying
trying
that
to
that's
fight
what
for
he
that and
wants.
say it's
Well,
right.
And
That's
I'm
what-
saying that's
It's wrong.
Well, is it wrong, though?
Is it wrong?
Certainly it's wrong.
Why
Why
don't
is
you
it
clean
wrong?
it up?
Why is it wrong? Why isn't it all right for a length of time, for a number of years, to let the black community control its own schools?
Do you have any purpose for that? Is
Yes,
there,
sure.
what is
I
the
mean, let
purpose?
them control their
The purpose
own
is not to go through the same thing that
support
these
it with
brothers are
their
going through
own
down at
tax
Bob.
structure.
Yes, we
Well,
pay taxes,
that-
give us our money back.
More tax
Absolutely.
money, as Dilworth
Absolutely.
said yesterday, goes to white pupils
That's right.
because
Absolutely.
the
Give us our
white
money.
teachers in
You ain't gonna
suburban
have to give it
schools
to
are
you.
more
We're gonna-
highly
we're gonna
paid.
deal with
Well,
that.
suppose you did have two separate nations and two
Well,
separate
I don't mean two
structures.
separate nations.
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
going to amount to that.
That's
apparently.
where you
See,
educate.
we
them.
already
That's
have
what
nation
it is.
There
within a
are
nation. The only
two
thing we're
separate
captive,
communities.
What's
man.
going
We
on?
never colonized slaves.
And it's bad. You see the problems we're
Well,
having in it?
you know,
Suppose
a
we
few-
Yeah, it's bad as
this
long as you
way.
control it.
A
Suppose
few
it's-
minutes ago,
as long
Mr.
as you
Lester
control
said
it.
something which was very significant as far as I was concerned, and I hope that we can go back to this. Now, before, he was saying a lot of these problems could be eliminated, and this whole business of tension could be eliminated if somehow we can get humanity to stop cracking the door and take the doors down. Just get rid of the doors and let there be an equal flow.
That's what killed Brother
opportunity
Martin Luther
for
King.
everyone.
That's what killed him. building. They opened that crack, and he said he saw a dream.
Right.
Well, we're
And he
taking it
followed
off
that
the
dream
hinge,
until they blew his
Lester. Come on
brains out
over with us.
violently, and then all the radio stations here blaring out, be nonviolent. I called the
Lester, if you'll come
WDS,
down,
asked them to
I'll
cut
open the door
the
for you
dance off
personally.
down to town hall, and we worked very hard to keep things cool. What happens? Rizzo, Tate say they kept the city cool. Baloney.
Wasn't I
Only
trying to
person can
keep
keep the
things
city
cool,
cool,
Lester?
Jim, are these brothers. They are the
Wasn't
only
I
ones,
trying to
man.
keep
They are the
things
only
cool,
ones.
Lester?
Cool by doing what you've done, going down
Don't
and meet
you-
with a
don't
group
you
of
think
whites
I
and
was
then come
trying
back
to
and
keep
show
the
a
whites
proposal to the
cool?
black community and tell us,
Don't
yeah,
you think I was trying to keep the whites cool, Lester?
how? With your
How?
attitude, man,
What's
you
wrong
don't
with
even
my
live in the
attitude,
neighborhood. You don't,
Lester,
as you said downstairs,
Lester,
you knew
if you
nothing
ever
about
get
the
in trouble, make sure your lawyer is from your neighborhood, okay?
I hope so. I hope he's going to be black anyway.
And he's
Now, here's
got to live
another-
within 2 blocks of you, right?
another problem-
Now, if he's not a good
No,
lawyer,
I'm
then
saying
shame
why
on
would
you.
the-
I
why would
was
the
there
neighborhood
as a
around-
lawyer
no, I'm saying
representing
why would the
some
neighborhood
people
around Bok
who
send all
asked
the way
me
out to
to.
52nd Street and get you when they have other Italian lawyers right there in the community?
Father Carbone,
Who
you
knows
wanna make-
more about it? You said you admitted that you knew nothing about Bok. You said you didn't even know the principal of Bok, right?
That's right,
Well,
I
it
did.
doesn't keep from being a
I
good
know
lawyer.
that, I know
Go
that when
ahead,
there's
Father
trouble,
Bok.
you have to
Here's-
talk
that's
to
the law. You
people.
put this piece
Here's
of
another
paper.
underlying problem about this business of opening the door. You realize there's an inequality in society between the blacks and the whites. And if there's going to be any equality, it's going to be from the white people having to be a little more understanding and really step down and try to help these people. In
Well,
other
when
words,
I step down, that
by, I mean,
that's
stepping down,
unfortunate
reaching
language.
down and helping them, bringing them up. In other words, it's going to be not just a mere justice, but there's going to have to be, on the part of the white community, a part of the white people, going beyond justice, actually helping along and pushing along.
what do you
now,
feel-
this is the problem, though. When you speak about this to white people, the first thing that they bring out is the fact, it's an act of absolute injustice. For example, I bring out just one particular problem. If there's a man who say merits a certain job, but there's a white man too who merits the job, certainly you're going to help the black people along a lot more by giving this black man a position of prominence. Not that he's incapable of it or incompetent, but by the very fact that you're helping him up there, you're going to do
See,
something
you
for
want,
the
see, a job is a job, but you
white
just earn
people
some
will
money
see-
in one
white
week.
people will
But
be
you must
absolutely-
understand, if you
Private
hired
money
every
won't let
black-
you finish.
right.
If every black man in America was hired today,
I-
and
I-
have no control
Lester, that
over
was
the
just
funds.
one
Like,
particular. It was
we
an
have-
it was
you
an
have a few
example I'm
jobs now.
trying
You
to
give black
give
people a few
you.
jobs now. But what good is it going to do, man, as long as you control the money? We don't control it. We want the control. That's
What
what
do you
we
want?
want.
You want
black
the money?
bank.
We want the control, our community.
How do you
Everything
propose
in
to
there.
get it?
The same way you do it.
Black business, black bank, right?
Same way they do
Well,
it.
that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
But how are you going to have harmony in the city like Philadelphia when you have a man like a cat like Rizzo being a police commissioner who will allow things the way the things that has gone on in this city, like
Well,
those
first of all,
1,000
Mr.
people
Rizzo's
right there.
not here to defend
Wait,
himself.
he
I think
doesn't
you
have
shouldn't
to.
make
We saw
accusations
it.
about him.
1,000 people right there at 9th and
No, it's
Mifflin,
not
and he's
fair.
sitting at 8th and Snyder.
Yeah.
And now, how are you going to keep a city cool?
All right.
How are you
Now,
going to work
what
with people?
should he have done?
He should have went out and did the same thing that he would have done if I'd have had 1,000 black brothers out there on the corner hollering black power with a loudspeaker and running through the
Well,
black
what does he do if you do that? Where has he ever done
Well,
anything to
he's-
anybody who has congregated people?
Wouldn't we agree, though?
You talk like he would have done
You know,
something else,
when
but you
these-
had no basis
But
for
Mr.
that.
Peruto, when the hundreds
I have
of
no
parents came
basis
down
for it.
from
Look at November
from Northeast,
17th. Look at November 17th.
What's November 17th?
November 17th. You don't even know what happened to the black students down there? But yet they
November
had the mothers from the
17th?
Northeast to go down there,
Well, what
damage the
will you
product,
tell me?
crack the windows, almost break into place.
What
Nothing
happened
Were
November
you in the
17th?
Lester,
building?
maybe you better explain to him November the 17th, 1967,
This
when
guy has no
some
business on this program. He doesn't know
young
anything
black
but how to write
adults,
these old white
some
proposals.
young black adults went to the Board of Education to cite some grievances that they had.
Oh,
This
yes.
was the beginning. And at that
For a
time,
better
this is where
education
they
and
had
not
the...
for a black power rally as the newspapers
They
project.
wanted history, talking about black history, not this business of tokenism, but a rather inclusion of the contributions of blacks all throughout our whole history
I
here
think
in the
that's
United
good.
States. Sure, it is good. We know this. But at the time, what he's referring to was the confrontation of the police as opposed to this. Now, let's make this be known. It's all throughout the community. There are citing examples of why the confrontation with the young people that day, and then the no confrontation the night that some of the adults from Northeast came down to the Board of Education.
When it's almost tore the place down.
These
That's
are
what
the things which are going back and forth in people's minds.
Yeah.
Now, getting back
Who
to the
was, it that
same
broke,
thing,
who was it that broke the window?
some of the adults from the Northeast, when they were talking about the desegregation
and
plan.
this is a local example of what the
Is
Kerner
this that
report
time when they were
documents
talking about
as
the-
police favoritism to
Busing.
white
Is
people
this,
in cities
where
all over the
also-
country.
Is this that one where they accused the black students of jumping on the cars?
Yes. But see, that's a whole
They were
story
also
in
jumping on
itself.
cars that night, too. Nothing
Well, this
happened
is
to them.
simply a local
In fact, they
example
even protected them in the store that they
of what
got
the
in
Kerner
neighborhood
report
safe.
documents all over the country as police favoritism to white people. And, you know, we would generally
Well,
agree
all
with
I can say is that as far as police favoritism is concerned, I did appear on behalf of everyone who had been arrested, offered my services free, I might say,
Good deed, darling.
and it included the black
You must
people who
understand
were
that there were
arrested.
no black students shouldn't have
And
even
the
been arrested
white
because they
people
weren't
were
doing anything.
arrested almost 5-1. So
Should've-
there
should've
was
been
no
all.
favoritism
Should've
there.
been all.
And by
Wait,
the
this brother
way,
had something to say. What'd
and
you have
by
to
the
say?
way,
What'd you have to say?
the black
We on
people who were
CBS.
arrested for coming into the area in an automobile. You see, there's always this few. I'm not saying this is an indictment against a race. This was an automobile with some adults, black adults, came into the area, and had one of them had an open knife stuck in his belt, and that they had come around through the area, around and around the school till finally they were stopped. And there was a tussle that they had with other people who were around. By the way, I notice you're picking up the proposal again. I guess you're, I guess you're going to tell me which one is bad, aren't you?
No, this is an incident in the
Lester,
community.
let me ask you
Wait,
frankly, are any of those proposals bad?
Yes,
Well, would you tell me which?
the whole thing, because we
Well,
had nothing
would you
to do
tell
with
me
it.
how they're bad? Tell me what's
We had
bad
nothing to do
about
with it.
them.
Now, these are the incidents
Oh,
that
just
happened
because
that
you didn't
Wednesday.
write them, they're bad. Is that what you mean?
No, not necessarily. No, I could have done a better job.
Well, no doubt you could have done a much better job. Now tell me what's wrong with the proposals.
Simply because you said... I'm
Don't
gonna
tell
show
me
you-
why. Tell me what.
What? The
Yeah.
whole thing, we had nothing to do
Well,
with it.
tell me one sentence that you disagree with.
A proposal formulated by the Committee of Representatives of
All
the
right,
community.
you've told us that. Now
Representative.
go into the proposals
Representative.
and tell us what you don't like.
Oh, measure to ensure peace and protection.
Isn't that something you want
We can
also?
do it better. Racial balancing of the area schools. The
I'd
reason
like to
why
get
you
back
want
to
to
something
balance
you think
to
should
the
be
reason
done?
why you want the balancing is simply because you're putting over $1 million worth of new equipment and everything.
Is
Bok,
that
and it's
right?
going to be upgraded.
Is that why?
Absolutely. Do
In
they
other
have the
words,
miniature
you
stations in
think
there?
you
Do they have
think
the
it should
computer in
be
there?
you think it
Now
should
that
be
they're
about
going to upgrade it, so
95% black? Is that right?
Well,
no, I think it should be all white, and we.
Do you think it ought to be balanced?
No, indeed. What good is that going to do? I think it should be all white, and build us an institution within our community, and we'll.
But then
we'll
you're
take
going
care of
back
it.
I'd like to get back to
Transportation
that
of
point.
students.
What
In
do you
other
think
words,
is
you're
going
not
to
saying it's
happen?
bad. You're saying you
School
disagree.
discipline. Now, here's a whole lot of baloney
School
here.
discipline,
This will
yeah.
never happen.
What?
This will never happen.
You
School
don't
discipline.
want school
let
discipline.
Father
Absolutely,
Carbone's got it.
absolutely, but not the police doing it.
Well, who
Shared
says that
time
they want the
program.
police to do it?
Oh man, you know what?
Where does it say they want the police to discipline the
Right
students?
under here. I can tell
Well,
you very
read
simply.
it
You
to
see, we
us.
have to learn the
Read
language.
it to the good people.
Let me ask,
may
Mr.
I say
Heisman,
one
yeah.
thing? We're talking about school discipline. I think that this must be stated so that everyone can get a clear picture of this.
I'm gonna read it.
I
to
spent many days in Bok Vocational School, and I'm going to tell you this. Those young adults, both black and white in that school, are very well behaved.
I agree
And they
from
are
what
just
I've
like
seen.
any other school. There will always be one or two
The
who are
problem
going
is
to
on
do
the
the wrong
outside
thing.
in the white community. That's the
But
problem.
I do not want anyone to indict the young people at Bok School
right.
because on the majority, you go through that school, and during all of these incidents, you would go in the classrooms, and those young adults were about the total business of education. And I was very, very proud of them and what they were doing.
That's right.
Now, what Mr. Lester was referring to, and I'm not going to say the reason why, it's just that it should have been over the years. That school in the last 2 years has been upgraded tremendously.
It
They
has
have-
also increased
they
be
have
quiet,
a
listen,
program.
has it not?
They have a program there, which is unique in the United States. I don't think too many people even know about the photogrammetry course. There's
That's
only
right.
one
You
other
see,
around in
this
this
is the main
hemisphere. That's
reason
up
why
in
they want the black
Canada.
cats out of there.
They
These
just found
there
out
are
as a result of
programs-
it.
We
There
don't. The
are
black
programs
community doesn't
which
know
are
anything
good for the
about it.
youth.
The black community itself doesn't know anything
do I
about
infer
the
from,
upgrading of
from
Bok
what you're
schools.
saying that you feel that the real problem is in the community?
Well, definitely.
In the right, and that
Definitely.
there is where the job has to be done. Now, Father Carbone, as a priest of a congregation in that area, what do you see as what you and the church in general can
First of
do?
all, it's definitely what every one of us has to do is, first of all, state our position very, very clearly that under no condition is any form of prejudice right, or under no condition will any one of us tolerate any form of prejudice. It's wrong. It's open. It's wrong. And I think we have to just keep making this fact known.
Yeah,
Now, the next fact is this. All right, how are you going to do this sort of thing? Fine. Better programs, re-educating the people, preaching about it, making it known, all this sort of thing. I mean, this is a very tremendous task, but how are we going to go about making the people, the white people, sensitive and understanding the Negro problem? I mean,
Well,
this
I want
is
to read
I
this.
don't
Maybe
know
this will
how
give
we're
you some
going to do this.
insight.
I
Maybe
mean,
this
this is a
will
real
give you some.
stiff problem.
Now he has a beautiful thing in his. Yeah, he has a
It was,
sense.
it was an incident just last week in school, last Thursday. We said about the policeman disobedience. As I was coming up from the gym, you know, and I stopped and I got 2 cans of milk, you know, because I just come from the gym, I was thirsty. It was a group of students around there, and there wasn't no lunch, it'd be a 7th lunch, you know, for the restaurant practice. So as I was drinking my milk, and I was going out to lunch, this officer, I forgot his name, is Roundtree or something. Well, anyway, his badge number is. And as I was going out and I finished drinking my milk, and he called me to the side. And he asked me my name and asked him why, you know, because they didn't go down to the office and say, well, this student did this and that. And asked him why. So he put me in the back, and he pulled out his blackjack. And he said, oh, your bad guy, just like that. So 2 teachers coming up, so he put it back in his pocket. And he pulled out his nightstick, and he said he know how to do away with all these bad guys. And he told me he was gonna beat my ass just like that. And he pulled out the stick. And he acted like he was gonna hit me with the stick, but he punched in my jaw. And I thought I was doing the right thing, went down to the office. And I went
He
down
punched you in the jaw?
He punched me in my jaw.
Oh, this kind of
And I
thing
went
is-
down to the office and I told Mr. Dickerson. Then Mr. Dickerson got Dr. Caparone in the office, so they agreed okay to bring my parents up the next morning. But they couldn't find an officer that day because they're looking for him. So in the morning, my parents came up to the
Mr.
school.
Dickerson.
Now just be
Let
quiet.
him
Listen to
continue,
man.
will
Just
you
be
Mr.
quiet.
please?
Listen to him.
Dickerson, who is Mr.
He's
Dickerson?
vice principal. He's a very good one.
Go ahead. Let's let
That's right,
Roger
because he
talk.
is one cat that they respect.
Go ahead.
Let them finish.
So my parents, they came up, no, first I came to school, Mr. Dixon told me to report to him, so I reported to him. And Lieutenant, I forgot his name now, you know, the lieutenant down at
Civil disobedience?
Down
Fensel?
11th Ward.
Fensel, maybe?
Lefton
Fensel?
Wharton. You mean Captain Clegg or Captain
Yeah,
Cock? Captain
Captain.
Clegg or...
So he was there, I think that's him. He was there, and you know, he didn't discuss anything. He didn't hear what I had to say about it, but he heard the officer point. But my parents hadn't came up yet. So about 11 o'clock, or just a little after, they had called for my parents was there, and the captain was there, and the officer was there. And they was in the room, and they heard the officer's side of the story. And the officer said that he didn't hit me, and that I had pushed him, and something, this and that. So as that was going on, you know, my parents was in the room, and I asked them, I wanted something done about it, like that. And the captain said something about a formal complaint and all that. So they took me in this other room. So my parents had left from there and left. And I went upstairs, and I saw him upstairs, and I went over to him, and I said that, and I asked him that he didn't punch me in my jaw just like that. And as I went over, I was gonna hit him back in his jaw. If I had hit him back in his jaw Thursday when it happened, they would have locked me up. And as I was going over there, they took me back downstairs and sent me home.
Well, we'll follow through on that. I'm glad to hear about this because I know that Captain Clegg and Captain Cocker have said to me that when these things are reported, they would follow through. As you know, a couple of them
And he
were
even gave,
pissed
they
off.
even gave the
Nothing been
badge
done
on him,
about
you
this.
know.
Well, I'm glad to hear about
And the
this. Now we'll
NTAs,
follow
from what
through
they,
on it.
when we hear, you see, the reason why I know so much about going
And
to school,
as
I
I
deal
was
with the
down,
young cats, you know.
as I was down there Friday, two NTA, they hopped in my face like they was Dick Tracy or Sherlock Holmes or one of them.
These
They had nothing
NTAs,
to do about it.
See, this is this whole business of respect for each other from all different avenues and all different groups. And I think if we ever can get this, and again, this is a sort of a nebulous sort of thing, if we ever can get it, then we are going to be a lot
as
better
of the
off.
day,
Is there
I
one
agree,
thing,
one police
Oh,
officer
Roger.
or one teacher can cause so much
Yeah.
more
That's right.
destruction
Would
than
there be
100
one thing
students.
we might all agree on, maybe all agree on, and that is that we do not want the police to be in charge of school security? Is that something we could all agree on?
Well, when you talk about don't want them to be in charge of school security,
What Tate has
I think
suggested.
you first have to say in place of what. In other words,
Well, the school has its own security system, and it's in planning to increase it and enlarge it.
yes, I
Yeah, you
understand that they're
see,
giving
the
some
focus is that the
special.
police take over the schools because
excuse
Mears
me,
is head of
Lester.
security
In
down
other
there.
words,
That's the whole
I
thing.
understand that they're
because
gonna,
even
have
Ross on
a-
the school board, he's not
I
saying
understand they're
anything.
going to have a security force that is supposed to get some sort of specialized training. You see,
But
the
not
thing
under
that-
the direction of the city police
Yeah, you see,
No,
department.
I think
Ross
it
is
should
on
be
the
under
school
the,
board, and he's fighting for
But
the.
you see,
he's fighting
the
for
trouble is
police.
that
You
what
see,
they
the-
have
the
had
police
is the
authority wanna take over the
retired
school.
police
They want to take over the
officer,
school.
the older man who doesn't relate to the student, and he could cause a lot more difficulty with students than he
Yeah.
could
Well, could I read
with
some
seven.
of your proposal? You asked me. It says,
Oh, wait a
we
minute. Just
Just
especially...
let Roger wanted to make a comment.
And, as of today, like I see the officer in school. Now, Mr. Dickinson, Friday, what they were saying, I didn't want to hear what they had to say about it because I was extremely hot about what happened. I wanted to get to him, but they sent me home. So Monday and Tuesday, as I come back, I see the officer in the hallway. He look at
Same
me
one?
and laugh. Same one. He look at me and laugh. It's like that. If I don't pay no attention, I just go ahead, and just mind my business like that. And I had told Mr. Dixon about him laughing, and I told Officer Conroy about him laughing, and Conroy said, nah, he probably don't think he did this or that. And as of today, nothing has been done about
have
it.
the same one there, regardless.
Now,
of
here's what
whether-
his proposal said. We especially protest those persons in authority who commend unruly students to take over in our schools. Schools should be run by the authority and not by small groups of students. I don't
That's
know what
right.
you mean by authority. Now, we specifically condemn the practice of inviting outside militant and agitators into the school to speak to the students. Now, I don't know what.
Where does this say that? Would you point that out to me,
This is your
please?
thing.
Yeah,
This is your
will you
thing. We
just
put it
point to
together.
it there?
Yeah, this is your thing.
Well, could
And,
you just point to the one word that you were reading there?
Here it is, right here.
What word do you want, Mr.
Which word do you want?
Could I just see it, please?
No, I have it. No, I don't give up nothing.
Well, what's the
Jim.
point?
Are
What were
you
you
sure
trying to
that
say?
you didn't add a couple of words there?
You read it over. Start right here. We especially.
Protest
Now, I
those
know you
persons in
believe this is
authority.
right. Man. I know
Right.
you believe
Go
it.
ahead.
Schools should be run by the authority and not by small groups of students.
Right.
We specifically condemn the practice of inviting outside militant and agitators into the
Yes.
schools to speak to the students.
Right.
Proposal. Now,
Right. Now, is there
now
something
you
wrong
are,
with that?
Yeah. What do you mean authority? Who is authority?
Without the principal, the administration of the school knowing it. We don't think that people should just walk into the
We
school
who?
and call an
We who?
assembly and the
We
students
who?
follow
We
them
who?
down.
We who? We who?
We, me, okay?
Oh, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think so.
Okay. That's good.
I don't think anybody should be allowed to walk right into
I'm,
a school,
no, I'm not
call
saying,
all
I'm-
the students
no,
together.
I'm not saying that. The reason why I've been so,
Don't you agree with that?
in part, the
You
reason
think
why...
it's all right if you wanted to just go into a school and say something to the
Not
students,
necessarily.
call an
No,
assembly?
not necessarily. No, I don't. I think that would be disrespectful to.
That's what we're saying.
To Mr. Dixon.
But that's
If-
not
if
what
you wanna
happened
refer
at
to
Bok, is it?
Say what?
That's not what happened at Bok,
No,
is
what
it?
did happen?
Busloads of them came down. Mr. Highsmith can tell you this himself. They
Look, wait a
walked
minute,
right
wait a minute,
in.
What day
wait a
was
minute. We
this?
better clarify this. This, I think he's referring to when several of the young people went out to West Philadelphia.
That's right.
To attend a meeting out in one of the churches there. When they returned to school, there were a couple of the Black Coalition members with them so that they would get back safely. Now, when they came to the school, the Black Coalition members, who looked like some of them who were as young as some of the young adults, walked into school with them. They got them into the auditorium, and at this time, Mr. Dickerson went down, and I will say at this point that the members who were with them were the ones who were instrumental in getting the young adults back into the classes. Now, if that is what you're referring to, getting back to the other thing to clarify this, Mr. Lester talked about this before, and I did too. No one can come into any school without first going to see the principal.
Well, what I meant was, that is what happened there, and it was a wrong thing, and the principal did put a stop to it. But they came in without permission and wanted to address the student body in the auditorium. Now, that's all I'm saying there. And I do think that that encourages students to do whatever
That's
they
right.
like.
And it encouraged, and the thing that happened outside that Wednesday.
Well,
with the-
you're going to
with the-
now
with the
talk about
police-
why
no,
the
no,
students did
I'm
what
gonna
they
talk
did
about
and
the
why
I'm
these
no, I'm
people
going to
came
talk
in.
about the police now.
You
How
could
they
be
marched,
entirely
how
right.
they marched the whites right up to Bok. With the
The
dogs.
police
stick.
marched
Oh
the
yeah,
whites
they
up
started
to
back
Bok.
and they marched right on up to Bok
What day was this?
that Wednesday.
The police marched.
Oh, they
I
kept
was there
backing
for
up. They
one
kept backing up, and we had
Oh,
you
and
out.
now they're backing
yeah.
up.
Well,
Wait a
the
minute,
same
were
thing.
you-
They just
I
kept.
thought
they
you
just,
said they were in the
they just
form
kept,
of leaders.
Yep. They just
You know,
kept coming
bringing
right
them
up.
up.
By the way,
I'm
from
gonna
1
tell you
o'clock
how
in the
that- He was
afternoon
there.
until 5, were you outside or inside the school?
I was outside
what
from
time?
school from around 9:30.
You were outside the school.
Outside. No, I'll tell you how it happened. We
No.
were having a meeting with the Vice Principal Dickerson.
Yeah.
This brothers was there. and another brother, and we had about 35, 40 students in there, and I was telling the brothers to be cool, not react, because the man was waiting. Now, while we were in the school is when this 6-year-old child was attacked.
Did you see Mr. Rizzo at any time while he was outside?
No, I didn't see him.
What he was doing?
No, I didn't see him. I wasn't looking for him. I was too busy with the brothers.
All right. Would you let me describe what I saw?
No, I'm not concerned about what you. I'm trying to tell you what I saw and what happened.
All right. Then may
I
I
saw
describe?
you were there. I saw you.
Fine. May I describe after you finish?
Yeah, after I finished. Now, when we came, we started to drive away, and then that's when someone said...
What time was that? I'm sorry.
Oh, this is what time we
It was
finished that meeting?
about something to 3.
All right.
Now, nothing was going on. No students were outside. No students. And when we started off, that's when they said something had happened up there. We went up there, and the thing had broken loose. I think that's when the some so-called white adults had attacked this 6-year-old kid. Our problem was to get the kids back in school and not to let them react.
And what time was this?
I can't remember the exact time. I can tell you.
It was
Wait,
something to 3.
wait, we have it right here. We have it right here. The fight between the girl. Around, yes, almost 3 o'clock. It's right
A
here.
6-year-old child was attacked by adults?
It was another girl. We was just coming from the meeting.
We were coming from the meeting. That's
That
right.
happened in New Orleans, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. On Wednesday, October 9th,
I guess it
1968,
does.
at
Yeah,
around,
we were
speaking about this particular
at
instance,
around 3
whether or not it
p.m., a
did.
black girl, age 6, was coming home from Southwark School, and a lot of people don't know that Southwark School is right across the street from Bok. When she was attacked on the 700 block of Dudley Street by white young males and beaten by them.
Adults?
There were police in the vicinity because of the Bok situation, but this incident wasn't prevented and no arrests were made. And we have a whole list of all these things.
Look, let me say this. Let me offer my services as a lawyer.
No.
If you can tell me,
It's here.
get me people who witnessed
here.
that, and
It's here.
I'll do it myself
See, in
for
fact,
you.
I
I'll
didn't
bring
even
the
compile this.
prosecution.
I didn't even compile it. I had
I'll
nothing to
bring
do
the
with that.
prosecution.
Yeah.
Myself.
Where did
I
you say
wouldn't
no?
trust you as far
I mean, I
as
see. This is
Well, now,
just.
If you're not going to trust me,
Now,
that's another
these
thing.
are a number. Look, here's a list of them.
There's your biggest
Okay,
problem.
here they are. A list of them. And I didn't put this together.
In other words, the same viciousness which occurs among whites when a rumor gets out of hand. I think this same thing might be taking place right here. Now, I was outside that Bok school from early in the afternoon, which was before 1 o'clock, up until the whole thing broke up after 5. I saw Mr. Rizzo, and I personally, myself, and all the other priests and ministers were walking into the crowd with those people, telling them to go home, telling them to cool, and all that sort of thing. I saw Mr. Rizzo act very kindly towards these people, telling them, for God's sake, you'd better go home. At one point, there were a bunch of children, whites, about 250, walking up this one street, and Mr. Rizzo turned to myself and a few others and said, if you can't stop these whites, we'll have to. We went in that crowd and stopped them, told them to go home and all that sort of thing. This business about marching up and all this sort of thing, I didn't witness that, and I don't think anybody else did.
Well,
No, I think they
I was
did.
out there all
And
both
they had
those
us
days.
surrounded, and we couldn't get out of that place. They had the, and nothing, and they had the entrance, they had 9th Street, 9th and Mifflin, and McKean and 9th Street, and 8th Street. They had all those side streets blocked up. Police in front and white people behind, right,
All right,
Bob?
let me
The
say
whole
couldn't
this.
get out?
Hold
You
on, Mr.
couldn't
Lester.
get out?
Let me
Oh,
say
they had
this.
us surrounded in that thing.
On
You mean
those-
they stopped you from getting out?
On those 2 days,
If we had tried to get out there at that time, we would have been attacked.
let me
If
ask
you would
Mr.
have.
Whiteside.
Oh, I
going back to
understood they
those 2
stopped you.
days,
Let
here
Mr.
is what
Whitesmith
I
make
saw as Father Carbone was describing. The first day, Commissioner Rizzo and them did a very beautiful job. They kept the adults, the white adults, all the way up the street there. And I think that was the day also when some of the white adults had gotten out of hand and he arrested them. That was the same time when some young white adults, not in the neighborhood, came over, 75 to 100 of them, and just wandered all around trying to seek a confrontation with the blacks. And this is when Commissioner Rizzo personally went over and grabbed a couple of the kids, had some of them arrested, and broke that up. But this was not from the neighborhood itself. Now, the next day, the people had gotten to such a large group. To me, it was just an uncontrollable group,
Tell him
if you
that.
remember.
Tell him that. He says I'm.
And they were all the way down to the street, right at the corner facing Bok. And the young people coming out of the school, seeing this huge mob, as I viewed it
That's what it
at
was.
that
Now,
time.
you didn't see that
This was
since
an
you were there. Why
agitation.
didn't you see
I
that?
certainly was
Everybody
there.
else saw it, but you. Why didn't you see it?
Wait a minute. What are you saying?
Well,
I
let-
didn't
let-
say.
and I
Oh, wait a
believe this-
minute.
Well,
no, no,
Mr.
no, no, wait a minute.
The other thing I want to say back to what Father Carbone was talking about,
Is this that same day as
yes.
the
Same
coalition?
day.
we're
Same
talking
day.
about rumors. I'll give you one example. One day, a white woman, walked up to the Jackson School and began to say, oh, they did it again. And the principal of the Jackson School said, did what? Oh, some of the blacks tore up Maria Goretti School. He said, hold it right here. And he called Rumor Center, found out this was just a vicious lie. And he got the woman, retraced his steps, and made her retrace her steps so that she would get this cleared up with each one that she had told. Now, these are the things that keep agitation going along.
Sure.
For instance, all of this precipitation was precipitated by the fact of a rumor about the young man who was stabbed from Bishop Newman. They would circulate around, I'm saying they, I don't like to use it because I don't know who did it, but they were some of the whites going around saying, the kid died, he's dead. We would say the young man was not dead. But this kept stirring up a whole lot of things. Now, again, we're going back to what I think all of us are saying in a degree. Respect for each other. When we're talking about police protection, we're talking about police protection for everyone, community
both black
and
and white.
adults.
Not
And let's
just
not
white
fool
alone.
ourselves. The majority of community, the majority of students are doing a wonderful thing. You know, the thing that made me know that there is some hope, and this is where I disagree with you, Lester, the reason why I say there's some hope, as I walked up and down those streets during all those days of tension, it made me feel pretty good when some of the whites would come up to me and say, you know, Mr. Heisman, I'm sorry about this whole thing. This is not us. We have, as any other group has, a few agitators, and they're bent on keeping it stirred up.
Yeah, well, they're acting like
Well,
the Viet
I think
Cong.
you
They
know,
are, they are,
Charlie,
they are,
some
they
of
are
the trouble I've had
citizens
with
by
some of the
day
agitators
and
myself.
guerrillas by night, because those same people, where all
Lester,
those
I
people come from?
think you're barking up the wrong tree, and I think your attitude
Oh,
is...
I
honestly,
imagine you will.
And it's going to persist this way, and I think what you're going to do is help this whole feeling of
Further
tension and hate
polarize.
really to be stirred
We're
up.
already polarized,
Why don't you
man.
put a stop to it? Isn't
How?
it
It's your
enough?
job. You stop the
It's
people
all
in the
of our
white
job.
community,
It's
then we'll
not
live in the
one
same
or
community.
the other's job.
It's
It's
everybody's
our
Nothing happened in
job,
this school.
Lester.
Well, he's saying-
I can't,
It's
look, I
our
cannot
job.
deal with white people because I don't understand white folk.
Well, why don't you come on
So
around
what-
and learn?
No, never. I will have
Why'd
to.
you let me go there and learn?
Never. We have to stay in our own community and deal with our problem. You work in your community, and then we would. If you had been doing your
Well,
job,
then you
man,
want
don't you know that we
polarization.
wouldn't have had the problem from the beginning?
Well, I think I'm in the
Now
same
you're
position
supposed to be
as
a preacher
policeman.
or
Well,
a
Lester,
minister
I
or
can
whatever you're
honestly
supposed to
say
be.
I do
now,
not
if you
think
had
you
been
speak
teaching
for the
something and
general
working with your
black
people
community.
from the beginning, this wouldn't have happened. It shows that you haven't done anything but walk around and talk a whole lot of baloney.
But
I
Lester,
think
you know
that's
what I
your
think is
opinion,
wrong?
Chester.
You know what I really think is wrong? Those who really believe in doing the right thing, and I think they are in the majority, they don't speak up loudly enough. It is the few who are bent on doing the wrong thing who just take over, and they are the ones who say, let's keep it stirred up. If
Right.
somehow we could get both black and white, the majority, who are really thinking about the good things, the things that should be done, about justice, about reality, about education for all, if they would learn to speak up and stop being apathetic, I think our problems would be solved. Now, how to get them to speak
Yeah, now
up,
let's
I
go
don't
back to
know.
what he
Mr.
said. He
Mr.
said that
Man.
he said that with what I'm saying is not going to ease the tension. No,
so
it
you
won't.
wanna-
Not until you do your job in your community with your own people.
All right, what do you want
we
me to
worked
do?
hard out there with
What do you
our
want me
people,
to
and
do,
we kept these
Lester?
brothers cool. These brothers didn't do a thing,
Lester,
man. We did our job. Now, why
I kept
didn't
the
you do
other
your
side
job?
cool, Lester. Mr.
We worked.
Highsmith, I think,
I know
will
we
attest
kept
to
them
that.
cool.
I
we
did
were
everything
cool.
in my
We
power
didn't do
and
a
did
thing.
keep
It was
them
the
cool,
white
Lester.
community. Now, why don't you solve your problem?
Lester,
And
since
stop
I've
talking
been
about
there,
our
I've
problem.
kept them cool.
We
Now,
aren't
what else
doing
do you
anything.
suggest?
There was not a single black parent out there carrying on like a bunch of idiots. Nobody but white folks.
Lester,
no one
Nobody.
said-
what else do
and
you
these
want?
students didn't even react.
No one
they were
said
cool.
there was.
Now why don't you do
Did
your
anyone
job?
say that there was?
Stop telling us that
I'm not
what saying is what we'll do.
Lester, why do you say it's not a dialogue?